When it comes to group level decision making, you've probably seen by now through your readings and some of the videos that decisions that are made by groups can also suffer from different biases. I'd like to talk briefly about a couple of those biases and also some things that we can do and things that I have done in my career to try to remove those roadblocks to group decision making. The first roadblock is what you hopefully know by now is called groupthink. And groupthink is when group members tend to conform to peer pressure. Group members may get scared of offering their own opinions. They may get scared of going against the majority of people in the room, and they might pretend that they agree with the majority just for the sake of keeping harmony and for the sake of avoiding conflict. Groupthink can be dangerous if you're a leader, because if your team agrees too quickly on everything, then it might lead you to make the wrong decision, right? As a leader, you want to call out the minority opinions. You want to call out the contrarian opinions, right? The opinions that disagree with the majority. This way you can make your own decision about which of the opinions have merit. But it's a very scary thing, and I think a very dangerous thing if sometimes teams agree too quickly on things. I remember during my experience running a financial technology startup company, if my team agreed too quickly on something, I might say, I don't think there's enough contrarian view here. I don't think there's enough debate going on. So I always got a lot more comfortable when my team told me, we can't agree too easily. There's a lot of people who think differently in this room. That would actually make me feel good because I felt that the real issues were being brought to light. I felt that the tough issues were being brought to the surface, and it made it easier for me to see what those tough issues were that I needed to give an opinion on, and maybe I needed to make some healthy decisions on too. So when people agree too quickly, you might think that's good, but in reality, it's not always a good thing if people agree too fast. Sometimes you want some healthy friction. You don't want groupthink. In the case that you will watch and write about, the Challenger space shuttle launch from the 1980s, I'll leave it to you to determine whether you think some of these group decision biases came to play in that very unfortunate decision in the 1980s. You also will watch, if you haven't already, the video on the Ash experiment. The Ash experiment is also from several decades ago, but it shows that sometimes groups can exert this pressure for people to conform. And if you're trying to make the best decision, you may not want conformity. You might want those minority views, or you might want those contrarian views to come out so that you know what they are and you can make a better decision as a result of it. So how do you guard against groupthink? What happens if you are managing a group or a team and everybody's agreeing too fast and nobody's challenging the status quo and nobody's comfortable offering up the minority opinion, or nobody's comfortable telling you that you're wrong because they're afraid of offending you at the meetings or something like that? They don't want to look bad in front of the leader. Well, there are a few things you could do. Number one is you can actually name what's called a devil's advocate. This is a term that actually comes from the Catholic Church many years ago. But a devil's advocate means somebody whose job it is to try to shoot down the majority opinion. Okay? So, for example, if there's a group of 10 people, and let's say 10 of those people agree, the devil's advocate would come in and would try to argue the opposite. The devil's advocate might not believe the opposite, but the devil's advocate's job is to try to disprove, try to poke holes, try to demonstrate why the majority opinion may not be right. At the end of that process, maybe the majority is right? But at least the majority opinions would have been tested. They would have been challenged. And so when something is challenged and tested, it usually emerges a lot stronger than when it got started. So one way you can combat groupthink as the leader is you can say, just so you know, here's the devil's advocate. Don't get mad at the devil's advocate. His or her job is specifically to cause a little bit of trouble, right? To say the opposite or think or challenge what that majority opinion might be. Devil's advocates can be very powerful in your own lives, professional, academic, and personal. Maybe from time to time, you might be effective at playing that devil's advocate role to make sure that you are challenging things in a healthy way and making sure that whatever decision happens at the end is not just because people followed the majority blindly, but because people actually thought carefully about the options and came up with the best decision. Another way of making sure that groupthink does not take hold in your groups is assembling teams that have diverse backgrounds, right? Because people that have diverse experiences are less likely to agree right away, and they're more likely to bring out some healthy differences that need to be addressed. And the other interesting thing you could do if you're a leader and you're asking your group to help you make a decision, as the group is debating and discussing and deliberating, you might not want to be at those meetings. You might want to sit out of those meetings. Why? Sometimes if the leader is part of every meeting, some of the members of that meeting might be afraid to say what they really mean. They might feel stupid. Did you ever not put up your hand in class because you thought the professor would think you're stupid or you thought other people would think you're silly? Don't do that. Feel comfortable putting up your hand. There's no such thing as a silly question or a stupid question. But sometimes people are intimidated if the boss is around them. So having the maturity to sometimes say, I'm going to step out of this meeting. I want you guys to speak among yourselves. I don't want to listen to what's going on at this meeting. After the meeting, we'll check in and we'll talk about what happened. Sometimes stepping out of the meeting is the most effective thing that a leader could do to reduce groupthink.